My name is Lena Morales. I'm 27 years old, and until last year, I thought I was building a life rooted in something solid, something that felt like home. But as it turns out, the people who raised me were laying a trap the entire time, and I walked right into it, smiling, pen in hand. I grew up in a modest two-story home just outside Santa Rosa. It wasn't glamorous, but it was filled with memories, late-night board games, burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, and the creaky step outside my old bedroom that I never managed to fix. After college, when my older brother moved across the country and my parents started struggling financially, I came back, moved in, helped out, paid bills, took on repairs. I thought it was what any loyal daughter would do. So when my dad handed me a manila folder with just some paperwork and told me to sign a few forms for property tax updates, I didn't hesitate. He even laughed and said, "You're practically the homeowner anyway." Mom chimed in, sipping coffee, telling me it was all routine. I signed every page, yellow tabs already pointing to where my signature should go. Not once did I question it. Why would I? They were my parents. But what I signed wasn't about taxes. It wasn't routine. It wasn't harmless. It was a deed transfer. In that moment, without a lawyer, without a second thought, I handed over ownership of the only home I had ever known. I didn't find out until nearly a year later, after they had packed up, sold the house, and disappeared to Arizona with the cash. No warning, no apology, just a voicemail from my mother that said, "We thought it was time for us to live a little before it's too late. You'll be fine, Lena. You always land on your feet." They stole everything from me with a few signatures and a lie. But here's the thing about landing on your feet. It means you're still standing. And once I realized I had nothing left to lose, I started planning how to take everything back. They made me sign it. Now I'm going to make them regret it. I was never the favorite. That title belonged to my older brother, Marcus, the golden child. The straight-A student turned investment banker who wore designer suits and only came home on holidays, if that. My parents practically worshipped the ground he walked on, always bragging about his promotions and beachfront condo, even when he couldn't bother to send a birthday card. Me? I was the steady one. The one who remembered to refill their prescriptions, who showed up for every emergency room visit, who fixed the leaking pipes and paid the overdue power bill more times than I could count. While Marcus sent flowers, I showed up with bleach and rubber gloves. While he wired money once a year, I gave up half my paycheck every month just to keep things from falling apart. And for a while, I didn't mind. Not really. I told myself love wasn't about being chosen. It was about showing up, about being the reliable one, the rock. I never asked for thanks. I just wanted to feel like I mattered, that maybe one day they'd see me for more than just the one who stayed behind. After I moved back in at 24, things slowly settled into a routine. I worked as a graphic designer remotely, so I had flexibility. I did the grocery shopping, managed their appointments, took over house repairs. Mom had knee issues, Dad's back gave out a few years ago, and they always said how grateful they were. At least, that's what I thought. Whenever I brought up the future, like what would happen to the house, or how their finances were being handled, they brushed me off. "This house will be yours one day," my father would say. "We're just trying to keep it afloat until then." And I believed him. I believed them. That everything I was doing wasn't just out of duty, but out of mutual love and trust. That when the time came, they'd do right by me. I didn't need them to shower me with praise. I just needed them to be honest, to treat me like family, to keep their word. Marcus, of course, was never expected to sacrifice anything. He called once every few months, sometimes to brag about a new venture, sometimes to ask if Mom and Dad needed help. But help from him always came with conditions or excuses. "I'll wire something next quarter," he'd say, but it rarely came. Yet they never asked him to move back, never asked him to clean gutters or fix broken windows. When he flew in for holidays, it was like royalty arriving. I was the maid and he was the guest of honor. I remember once asking Mom why I had to cover the property tax while Marcus was buying a third car. She didn't even blink. "Because he works so hard, Lena. He's not like you. He has real responsibilities." That moment should have been the red flag, but I ignored it. I was still hoping that showing up every day would eventually earn me the same love they gave so freely to someone who barely picked up the phone. Then Marcus got into some financial trouble. He'd made a few bad investments, high-risk real estate deals, crypto nonsense. Suddenly, my parents were whispering behind closed doors, taking calls at odd hours, and looking more and more anxious. When I asked what was going on, Mom waved it off. "Just some retirement planning, sweetie." Looking back now, I realized that was when the plan was forming. A few weeks later, they asked me to help streamline the property paperwork. Said they needed my signature to help with tax assessments. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, the folder in front of me, highlighter marks guiding my pen like breadcrumbs. I didn't read the fine print. I didn't think I had to. The day after I signed, everything went back to normal. They were warm, even unusually kind. Mom made my favorite stew. Dad called me his girl, like he hadn't in years. I thought I had finally earned my place. I thought maybe, finally, I wasn't invisible. But 2 months later, they started talking about traveling. "Just a little trip to Arizona," they said. "We need some sunshine, maybe check out the retirement communities." I helped them book the flights, drove them to the airport, hugged them goodbye. I didn't know it would be the last time I saw them in person. They stopped responding to texts. Calls went unanswered. Then a letter came, not even a phone call, saying they had sold the house. That the market was too good to pass up, and they needed the money for their new phase in life. No mention of where I was supposed to go. No mention of how they sold my home, the one I had poured years of work and sacrifice into. I stayed in that empty house for a week after receiving the notice of sale. I slept on the floor in a room stripped of furniture, stunned, nauseous, betrayed. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. I emailed. Nothing. I went to the county office to request the property records. That's when I saw it. The deed transfer, signed by me, months ago, notarized, legal. They hadn't just stolen the house, they made me give it to them. And that betrayal, that carefully planned, cold-blooded betrayal, lit something inside me I didn't know I had. This wasn't going to be one of those sad stories where the loyal daughter gets left behind. Number. They wanted to play legal games. I was about to become fluent. The first thing I did was move out of the house. Technically, I had 30 days before the new owners took possession, but I couldn't stomach another night sleeping under a roof that had become a symbol of betrayal. I packed everything I could into my hatchback, stored the rest with a friend, and crashed on a former roommate's couch while I figured out my next move. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call my parents and demand answers, demand justice, but I knew better. They were skilled manipulators, the kind who would twist my words until I was the villain. They'd say things like, "You're overreacting," or "We raised you, Lena. How dare you question our intentions?" I could already hear their voices in my head. Instead, I got quiet. Strategic. I started with the deed. I took a copy of the signed paperwork to a real estate attorney. His name was Jeremy Finch, and he had the tired, weathered look of someone who'd seen every kind of family betrayal imaginable. He flipped through the pages and sighed. "It's airtight," he said. They set this up carefully, had a notary, used all the right language. From a legal standpoint, you gave them the house. But they told me it was for taxes, I said, voice tight. He looked at me sympathetically. Did you read the fine print? I shook my head. Then I'm sorry, Lena, he said. You were manipulated, but the law doesn't care about intent. It cares about signatures. I left his office with a sick feeling in my gut. My parents had planned this meticulously, manipulated my trust, pre-filled everything, even used my love for them as a weapon. And they got away with it. At least, that's what they thought. I started digging into their finances, into Marcus's recent real estate ventures. Turns out he wasn't just in trouble, he was drowning. Lawsuits, tax liens, failed investments in short-term rentals, and a defunct app he tried to build. He was thousands in debt. And suddenly, it made sense. They hadn't sold the house for retirement. They sold it to bail out Marcus. He got saved. I got evicted. The fury bubbled inside me like a pressure cooker. But I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want a confrontation that ended with more lies. I wanted something permanent, something cold and exacting, something they couldn't undo with another lie. I reached out to Jeremy again. If I can prove coercion, I said, or misrepresentation, can we challenge the deed? Possibly, he said, but it won't be easy. You'd need hard evidence, texts, emails, witnesses, anything that shows they deceived you. So I dug deeper. I scrolled through old emails, voicemails, even receipts. I remembered one thing, one critical thing. Dad had said when I asked why he was rushing me to sign, "Come on, we've got to get this to the accountant before the weekend." The accountant. If he was involved or at least aware of the context, he might have documentation. I tracked him down. Howard Green, a mild-mannered CPA who had done their taxes for years. I scheduled a meeting, presented myself calmly, and asked, "Do you remember what my parents said about the deed transfer I signed last spring?" He blinked, uneasy. They said it was temporary, that it was just for a refinancing issue, something about helping you qualify for tax relief, I think. I leaned forward. "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" He hesitated. "If it helps correct a wrong, then yes." It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was something, a contradiction, a crack in the legal facade, and it gave me hope. I wasn't done. Next, I tracked down the notary who witnessed the signing, a retired school teacher named Elaine who freelanced as a mobile notary. She remembered the meeting, remembered my parents rushing her, remembered me asking, "This is just a tax thing, right?" She nodded and said, "Yes, you asked that." I didn't know the full context, of course. I was told it was for tax restructuring. I asked her the same thing I asked the accountant, and she agreed. 2 statements, 2 people who could confirm I was misled. My parents built their betrayal on silence, but now I had a paper trail, and soon I'd have something far more powerful, leverage. Once I had statements from both the accountant and the notary, I sat down with Jeremy again. "This changes things," he said, flipping through the written testimonies. "It still won't be easy, but now we have a case for civil fraud, especially if we can prove your signature was obtained under false pretenses." But Jeremy gave me 2 options. Option 1, file a lawsuit. Public, messy, expensive. It would make the local paper, pit me against my family in a very visible way, and likely drag on for over a year. Option 2, leverage what I had for a private settlement, one where I'd take back control, but on my own terms. I chose the second. I wasn't after spectacle. I was after resolution. And I knew one thing my parents cared about more than even their pride, their reputation. They had always been social butterflies, country club regulars, charity board members, hosts of backyard barbecues where they bragged about their successful kids. They wanted to look perfect. I was going to use that. First, I crafted a carefully worded letter. Not emotional, not accusatory, just cold, factual, and quietly threatening. Dear Mom and Dad, I've spoken to a real estate attorney and have obtained written statements from both your accountant and the notary. These statements confirm that I was misled into signing a deed transfer under false pretenses. As you are aware, this act constitutes misrepresentation and could be grounds for civil litigation. However, I am offering you the opportunity to resolve this matter privately. I am requesting a formal settlement agreement, wherein you will compensate me for the full market value of the home at the time of sale. You may choose to do so via structured payments or in a lump sum. Should you decline, I am fully prepared to proceed with a civil suit and submit these materials to local media outlets. You have 10 business days to respond. Lena. I printed it, mailed it, certified, signature required. Then I waited. Exactly 5 days later, I got a call. Lena, my mother said, her voice clipped and shaking. This is absurd. You're going to destroy this family over money? No, I said calmly. You did that. I'm just asking you to clean it up. My father called the next day, calmer, but panicked beneath the surface. He asked for a meeting. I agreed. I told them we'd meet at Jeremy's office. When they arrived, they looked uncomfortable in their tailored clothes, suddenly unsure of their power. Jeremy laid out the proposed agreement, market value of the home, $468,000. They could repay it in 24 structured monthly payments. It would be private, sealed, no court, no headlines, no exposure. They sat stiffly, flipping through the pages. We can't afford that, my father muttered. Jeremy didn't flinch. Then Lena will file suit, and given what we have, it's a risk you'll likely lose, and lose publicly. They didn't sign that day, but 3 days later I received a message from their lawyer. They'd agree to the terms. The paperwork was signed and notarized by the end of the week. And just like that, the same legal system they used to rob me became the one I used to take it all back. But it wasn't just about the money, it was the look on their faces. Seeing the daughter they thought they could manipulate stand her ground. Watching the loyalty they had abused turn into something they couldn't control. That was my real revenge. Not loud, not dramatic, but permanent. The first payment hit my account at 9:03 a.m. on a Monday. $19,500, labeled Settlement Installment 1 of 24. No apology, no note, just money, cold and clinical, like the relationship had become. It should have felt victorious, and in some ways, it did. I'd won. I had taken back control. They didn't get to walk away with everything while I was left sleeping on couches and questioning my worth. The law, the very weapon they used against me, had finally turned on them. But then came Marcus. He called me for the first time in almost 2 years. Lena, this is getting out of hand, he said, like I was the one who had crossed the line. You're not involved, I replied flatly. Of course I'm involved. They're paying you back with my money. That stopped me cold. Your money? He sighed like I was a child. I had to bail them out, again. They couldn't come up with that kind of cash. So yeah, I'm funding the payments. I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch until he filled it with more excuses. You should have come to me, he added. We're family. I laughed. For the first time in weeks, I really laughed. You mean like when they came to me about signing the deed transfer? Or when they sold my home to cover your bad investments? He had no answer. This wasn't about money, Marcus, I said, voice firm now. It was about being lied to, used, and discarded like I was nothing. And for the first time in my life, I decided I wouldn't accept that. He hung up. That conversation marked a shift. It wasn't just legal or financial anymore. It was personal. The golden child, the one who never had to face consequences, finally saw what it looked like when someone said no to him. Then, a week later, the real moment came. I got an invitation in the mail. A formal, ivory-colored card with gold trim. The Morales family reunion, Scottsdale Country Club. Handwritten at the bottom, "Please attend. We'd like to make things right." I took a breath, and then I made a decision. When I arrived, the party was in full swing. String lights, catered food, faux laughter echoing around the manicured lawns. The old community of my parents' friends was there, the people who used to pat me on the head and ask why I wasn't more like Marcus. My parents approached me cautiously, almost sheepishly. Mom wore her usual pearls. Dad, his stiff smile. "Lena," she began, "we just wanted to—" I raised a hand. "Don't." She blinked. "But I'm not here to reconcile," I said calmly. "I'm here so you can look me in the eye, so you never forget that I held you accountable, that I stood up when no one else ever did." People nearby had started to quiet down, listening without trying to look like they were. My father shifted uncomfortably. "You didn't have to make it public." "I didn't," I said. "You did. When you weaponized trust, when you sold my life out from under me, I kept it quiet because I'm not here to ruin your image." I leaned in just slightly, my voice low and even. "I'm here to make sure you never ruin me again." And then I turned and left, walking straight through the crowd, their eyes following me, not with pity, not with confusion, but with something new. Respect. After the reunion, I expected the phone calls to start. Apologies, excuses, desperate attempts to save face. But they never came. Instead, what I got was silence. A cold, hollow quiet that used to terrify me. But now, it felt like freedom. They didn't try to reach out again. No birthday texts, no check-ins, no guilt-ridden messages. I suppose the shame of being publicly confronted, or maybe just the realization that I wouldn't back down, finally settled in. Or maybe they simply didn't know how to face the daughter they could no longer control. Either way, I didn't miss them. I used the first few settlement payments to get back on my feet. I found a new place, nothing extravagant, but it was mine. A little one-bedroom condo with warm light and creaky floors. I filled it with plants, hand-me-down bookshelves, and thrifted furniture. Everything in it had a story. Everything in it felt earned. And that's what mattered now. Ownership. Not just of property, but of my life. I started saying no more often. No to clients who underpaid and over-expected. No to family members who wanted to talk, but only on their terms. No to the version of me that kept shrinking herself to make others comfortable. Instead, I leaned into what I'd neglected for so long, myself. I reopened my freelance design business and gave it a total makeover. New branding, new pricing, new confidence. Clients came back, new ones showed up. I was no longer Lena the helper, the one who always picked up the slack for everyone else. I was Lena, the business owner, the woman who fought back, the woman who won. As the months passed, each payment was a strange reminder of everything I'd been through. 24 in total, each one a small restitution, each one a silent acknowledgement of their guilt, even if they'd never say it aloud. But I didn't need their words anymore, because I had something far better than an apology. Proof. Proof that I could rebuild. Proof that I didn't need their approval to be whole. Proof that being the quiet, dependable one didn't mean I had to be disposable. Marcus sent one last email during the 6th month of payments, a terse one-liner. Hope you're happy now. They barely talked to me either. I didn't respond, because I was happy, not in a loud celebratory way, but in the kind of way that sits deep in your bones, peaceful, certain, unshakable. One day, I walked past my old neighborhood. The house was still there, fresh paint, new flowers in the yard, laughter echoing from inside. A young couple now lived there, a toddler waddling on the porch. It hurt to look at it, but it also felt poetic. That house didn't belong to me anymore, and for the first time I was okay with that, because I finally understood what they took from me was never just a house. It was stability, trust, a sense of safety. But what I reclaimed was everything else. It took time to stop flinching every time the phone buzzed. For years, I had lived on edge, waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next emotional landmine disguised as a favor. When I cut the cord between me and my parents, I thought the pain would be immediate, like ripping off a bandage. Instead, it was a slow unraveling. Grief came in waves, not just for the house or the betrayal, but for the version of family I had imagined in my head. The one where love was unconditional, where loyalty was mutual, where sacrifices were repaid with gratitude, not manipulation. But healing also came, quietly, gently, in the little things. It came when I drank coffee on my new balcony without feeling like I was neglecting someone else's needs. It came when I stopped apologizing for setting boundaries. It came when I realized that love, real love, doesn't come with fine print. I started reconnecting with people I had unintentionally pushed away during those chaotic years. Old friends, mentors, my godmother, who had always warned me that my parents weren't the saints they wanted to be seen as. I let myself be seen again, not as the fixer, the daughter, the one who held it all together, but as Lena, just Lena. And in doing that, I realized something I hadn't dared believe before. I never needed their validation to be whole. I never needed to earn love by giving up pieces of myself. They taught me that love was conditional, that my value depended on my usefulness, that if I didn't comply, I would be discarded. But the moment I stopped playing their game was the moment I started winning mine. The final settlement payment came a little over a year after the first. It felt anticlimactic in a way. There was no grand apology, no letter, no olive branch, just a wire transfer. But I didn't need closure from them anymore. I had already built it myself, brick by brick, day by day. With every step I took to reclaim my life, I proved that their betrayal didn't define me. I did. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone I recognize, not the daughter they tried to mold, but the woman I chose to become. And that, more than any house or settlement or courtroom victory, is the real inheritance I claimed. Myself.